Marcus Tate strode into Horizon Airways' first-class cabin, his tailored suit crisp, ticket gleaming in hand. The Atlanta flight buzzed with chatter until Karen Whitlock, a sharp-eyed flight attendant, blocked him. Her lips curled. "This isn't your place, boy." Passengers gasped. Marcus, eyes blazing, declared, "I own this airline." He grounded the plane, stranding all aboard. Karen smirked, whispering, "You'll regret this." What would Marcus face next? Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. If you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe for more gripping stories. The Atlanta tarmac shimmered under a 90-degree sun, its heat rippling through Marcus Tate's navy suit as he stood firm, his jaw tight, staring down Karen Whitlock. Her blonde hair glinted, her smirk defiant, as passengers spilled from the grounded Horizon Airways plane, their phones flashing like fireflies. Marcus's voice cut through the humid air, sharp and unyielding. "You're fired, Karen. Pack your things." Her eyes narrowed, but she sauntered off, heels clicking, leaving a ripple of gasps among the crowd. Passengers, a mix of business travelers and families, buzzed with shock, their cameras capturing every second. A young black woman in a red dress cheered, her voice rising above the murmurs. About time someone stood up. An older white man in a polo shirt shook his head, muttering about disrespect. Marcus felt a surge of pride, his chest swelling as he imagined the story spreading, a beacon of justice against the ugly stain of racism. He'd built Horizon Airways from nothing, a black veteran who'd flown fighter jets and dodged missiles, turning his grit into an airline that hired the overlooked, the underestimated. This, he thought, was his stand, a moment to show the world what his company stood for. By dusk, the video hit the internet, a 2-minute clip of Karen's sneer and Marcus's calm, commanding response. It exploded, racking up 10 million views. In hours, Twitter lit up with hashtags, "Justice on Horizon," "Narf Fire Karen." Blogs hailed Marcus as a hero, a black man who'd flipped the script on prejudice. His phone buzzed nonstop, texts from friends, calls from reporters. His assistant, Tanya, a sharp 30-year-old with a knack for PR, rushed to his side, her tablet glowing with analytics. "Boss, you're trending worldwide," she said, her braids swinging as she scrolled. "We're getting bookings. People want to fly with us." Marcus nodded, his lips curving into a rare smile. For once, he thought, the system might bend his way. But as night fell, the tide turned, a dark wave crashing over his victory. His phone pinged with a new video, this one edited with surgical precision. It showed Marcus looming over Karen, his voice clipped to sound menacing, his grounding of the plane framed as a tantrum. The caption read, "Airline owner bullies innocent worker." Comments flooded in, venomous and sharp. "Typical thug behavior," one wrote. "He's the real racist," another spat. Marcus's stomach churned, his fingers tightening around his phone. Tanya's eyes widened as she watched the views climb, surpassing the original clip. "This is no accident," she whispered. "Someone's behind this." By morning, the backlash was a storm. Protesters swarmed Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, their signs jagged with hate. "Boycott Horizon," and "Marcus Tate hates workers." A white man in a trucker hat screamed slurs, his spit flecking the pavement, while a woman in a sundress clutched a megaphone, accusing Marcus of reverse racism. News vans lined the terminal, their cameras hungry for chaos. Inside Horizon's sleek headquarters, a glass tower overlooking the runways, Marcus stared at the TV, CNN looping the doctored clip. His CFO, a wiry man named Greg, burst in, his tie askew. "We've lost 5 million in bookings overnight," he said, his voice cracking. "Investors are spooked. They're talking about pulling out." Marcus's pulse hammered, but he kept his face stone, a skill honed in war zones. He'd faced worse than this, he told himself, like the time his squadron was ambushed over Kandahar, bullets tearing through his jet. But this felt dirtier, a betrayal not just of him but of everything he'd built. Tanya dug into the video's source, her fingers flying across her laptop. "It's Richard Hale," she said, her voice low. "That board member who's always pushing for traditional values. He's got ties to media firms. This has his fingerprints." Marcus knew Hale, a silver-haired 60-year-old with a politician's smile and a knack for swaying the board. Hale had opposed Marcus's diversity initiatives, arguing they alienated customers. Now, it seemed, he'd found a bigger weapon. Marcus strode to his office window, watching the protesters below, their chants a dull roar through the glass. A teenager hurled a bottle, shattering it against a Horizon sign. The crowd cheered, their faces twisted with rage. Marcus's mind raced, plotting his next move. He could issue a statement, clarify the truth, maybe sue for defamation. He'd grounded the plane to stand against racism, but now his airline teetered on the edge, its stock plummeting 20 points. Customers canceled flights, calling Horizon divisive. A major partner, a hotel chain, pulled their contract, citing brand misalignment. Marcus's email flooded with threats, each one uglier than the last. "Go back to where you came from," one read. "You don't belong here," another hissed. He deleted them, his jaw tight, but the words burned, a reminder of every slight he'd endured, from being tailed in stores to being questioned at checkpoints despite his uniform. He thought of his father, a mechanic who'd faced the same hate, telling him, "Keep your head up, son. They'll try to break you." Marcus wouldn't break. Not now. He called a press conference, ready to fight back, his voice steady as he prepared to expose the doctored video. Tanya lined up allies, influencers who'd amplify his message. By noon, the airport's media room was packed, reporters jostling for space, their microphones a forest of steel. Marcus stepped to the podium, his military posture rigid, his eyes scanning the crowd. "I grounded that plane because racism has no place on Horizon Airways," he said, his voice booming. "The video you've seen? It's a lie, twisted to tear us down." He showed the original footage, unedited, Karen's words clear as day. The room buzzed, reporters typing furiously. For a moment, Marcus felt the tide turning, the truth cutting through the noise. Social media shifted, some users apologizing, others doubling down. Bookings trickled back, a few $1,000s at a time. He left the conference, his shoulders lighter, thinking he'd regained control. But as he drove home, his phone lit up with a new alert. The protesters hadn't dispersed. They'd grown, their numbers swelling to hundreds, blocking the airport's main entrance. Police stood by, arms crossed, doing nothing as the crowd chanted, "Fire Tate!" A local news anchor, her voice slick with bias, reported mounting outrage against Marcus, framing him as a tyrant. Tanya called, her voice urgent. "It's Hale. He's funding the protests. I found payments to a PR firm that's been stirring this up." Marcus gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles pale. Hale wasn't just a board member. He was a puppet master, pulling strings Marcus hadn't seen. The boycott wasn't just hurting Horizon. It was strangling it, with losses now at 10 million, and climbing. Customers who'd booked flights yesterday were gone today, their trust eroded by a lie. Marcus pulled into his driveway, a modest brick house in a quiet suburb, and sat in his car, the engine ticking as it cooled. He'd fired Karen to send a message, but now his airline, his life's work, was bleeding out. The protesters' chants echoed in his mind, a reminder that this wasn't just about one flight attendant. It was systemic, a machine of hate with Hale at the controls. He thought of his daughter, Aisha, 16 and fierce, who'd texted him a heart emoji after the press conference. He couldn't let her see him falter. Tomorrow, he'd face the board, demand answers, and fight for Horizon. But as he stepped inside, his TV flickered on, a breaking news banner flashing. Horizon Airways faces collapse amid boycott. The anchor's voice was grim, predicting bankruptcy within days. Marcus's heart sank, his victory at the press conference already fading. Hale's smear had rooted deeper than he'd imagined, and the protesters were just the start. What would Hale unleash next? Marcus stood in his living room, the weight of the fight settling on his shoulders, knowing this was only the beginning of a war he hadn't chosen, but would have to win. Marcus Tate's polished shoes echoed on the marble floor of Horizon Airways' executive suite, the Atlanta skyline a jagged silhouette through floor-to-ceiling windows. His navy tie felt like a noose, The weight of the boycott's $10 million losses pressing on his chest. The boardroom, a sleek oval of mahogany and glass, hummed with tension as 11 board members sat rigid, their eyes darting. Richard Hale, the silver-haired puppet master, leaned back in his leather chair, his smirk as sharp as a blade. Marcus had come to rally his allies, to crush Hale's smear campaign that had turned his stand against Karen Whitlock's racism into a public lynching. The air smelled of coffee and betrayal, the room's 80-degree chill doing nothing to cool Marcus's simmering rage. He'd built this airline, poured his Air Force pension and 20 years of sweat into it, only to watch Hale twist his victory into a nightmare. "We're bleeding," Marcus began, his voice steady, honed from years commanding squadrons. "Hale's doctored video is killing us. I need your support to fight back." A few nodded, their faces tight, but Hale's chuckle cut through, low and venomous. "Support?" he said, his blue eyes glinting. "You're the problem, Tate. Grounding planes, firing loyal workers like Karen Whitlock. The union's furious. Reinstate her or we're done." Marcus's pulse spiked, his fists clenching under the table. Karen, the flight attendant who'd called him boy and sneered at his first-class ticket, was no victim. She was Hale's weapon, her racism now a rallying cry for bigots nationwide. Marcus scanned the board, searching for allies. Lisa Nguyen, a sharp-eyed tech entrepreneur who'd backed his diversity initiatives, met his gaze, her nod subtle but firm. Others, like Greg the CFO, stared at their laptops, avoiding his eyes. The room felt like a battlefield, Hale's influence a minefield Marcus had to navigate. Karen's actions were unacceptable, Marcus said, his voice rising. "Horizon stands for equality. Back me, and we'll rebuild trust, show the world who we are." Hale leaned forward, his Rolex catching the light. "Equality's a nice word, Tate, but it doesn't pay the bills. The union's got 20,000 members ready to strike. Reinstate Karen, or Horizon's finished." Marcus's jaw tightened, memories flashing of his father, a mechanic, enduring slurs to feed their family. He wouldn't bend, not now. Lisa cleared her throat, her voice cutting the silence. "I've got evidence," she said, sliding her phone across the table. "Hale's been pushing Karen's case for cultural reasons. I recorded him." Marcus's heart leapt, a spark of hope igniting. Lisa played the audio, Hale's voice clear, smug. "We need people like Karen to keep things traditional." The board gasped, faces paling. Greg's eyes widened, his laptop forgotten. Marcus seized the moment, uploading the recording to Twitter from his phone, his fingers trembling with adrenaline. "This is who's sabotaging us," he said, glaring at Hale. "A man protecting racists." The tweet went viral in minutes, racking up 1 million views. News outlets picked it up, headlines screaming, "Horizon board member exposed." Social media flipped, users praising Marcus's courage, calling for Hale's resignation. Bookings surged, customers returning in droves. By evening, Marcus stood in his office, the city's lights twinkling below, his phone buzzing with support. Tanya, his assistant, grinned, her tablet showing a 20% stock jump. "You did it, boss," she said. Hale's toast. Marcus exhaled, his shoulders loosening for the first time in days. The recording had turned the tide, exposing Hale's bigotry and rallying the public. He imagined Aisha, his daughter, watching the news, proud of her dad. Maybe, he thought, he'd weathered the storm. But as he poured a coffee, his phone lit up with a breaking news alert. A grainy photo splashed across CNN. Marcus, younger, in a bar, his arm around a woman, her face blurred. The headline read, "Horizon CEO accused of sexual harassment." The story claimed Marcus had harassed an ex-employee, a white woman named Ellen Carter, 10 years ago. Ellen, interviewed live, tearfully recounted a fabricated incident, her voice shaking. "He threatened my job," she said. A second woman, anonymous, backed her story. Marcus's coffee mug slipped, shattering on the floor, ceramic shards scattering like his thoughts. He'd never met Ellen Carter. His stomach twisted, the room spinning as Tanya rushed in, her face ashen. "It's Hale," she said, her voice low. He's paying her. I found a wire transfer, $50,000. Marcus's mind raced, the boardroom victory dissolving like smoke. Hale hadn't just protected Karen. He'd built a machine to destroy him, and this was its next gear. The stock, which had soared hours ago, plummeted 30 points as investors panicked. Social media erupted, the same users who'd cheered him now hurling insults. Hypocrite, predator. Protesters returned to the airport, their signs uglier. Tate's a threat. A local radio host, his voice dripping with scorn, called Marcus a wolf in sheep's clothing. Marcus sank into his chair, the city's glow outside mocking him. He'd exposed Hale, thought he'd won. But Hale had struck back, weaponizing a lie to shred his reputation. The harassment claim wasn't just a headline, it was a blade, cutting at his integrity, his legacy. He remembered his Air Force days, facing prejudice in the ranks, proving himself through skill, not words. This was different. A war where truth didn't matter. Tanya pulled up Ellen's bank records, her fingers flying. "We can prove it's fake," she said, "but it'll take time." Time Marcus didn't have. His email pinged with a resignation demand from a board member, then another. Greg called, his voice frantic. "The investors are bailing. We're down 15 million now." Marcus stared at the TV, Ellen's tear-streaked face looping, a lie that felt truer than his truth. He thought of Aisha, how she'd face her classmates tomorrow, whispers trailing her. He couldn't let Hale win, couldn't let this lie define him. Tomorrow he'd dig into Ellen's story, find the cracks, fight back. But as he left the office, the protesters' chants echoed, louder now, a mob fed by Hale's money. The boardroom had been his battlefield, and he'd thought he'd claimed victory. But Hale's counterattack was a sledgehammer, smashing everything Marcus had built. What else was Hale hiding, and how much deeper would this betrayal cut? If you're raging at Hale's dirty tricks, comment number 1 to stand with Marcus against this injustice. Hit like if you believe truth can still win. And subscribe to follow his fight for justice. How far will Hale go to bury Marcus, and can Marcus outsmart this vicious lie? Marcus Tate's office, a sleek fortress of glass and steel overlooking Atlanta's runways, felt like a cage as he pored over bank records under the glow of a desk lamp. The false harassment claim, a venomous lie orchestrated by Richard Hale, had slashed Horizon Airways stock by 30 points, and the $15 million losses gnawed at his gut. His phone buzzed with hate mail, each message a splinter. "You're a disgrace," one read. "Resign, fraud," another hissed. But Marcus, his Air Force colonel's resolve unyielding, had a plan. Tanya, his assistant, had traced the $50,000 payment to Ellen Carter, the accuser, back to Hale's shell company. With evidence in hand, Marcus called a press conference, his Navy suit crisp despite the 90-degree heat clinging to the city. The media room buzzed, reporters' cameras flashing like a storm. Marcus stood at the podium, his voice steady, eyes burning with conviction. "The harassment claim is a fabrication," he declared, holding up the bank records. "Hale paid Ellen Carter to lie, to destroy me and Horizon." The evidence was ironclad, the transfer details projected on a screen behind him. Reporters gasped, their keyboards clattering. Within hours, the story flipped. CNN retracted their earlier report, and Twitter erupted with support. "Your Marcus Tate vindicated" trended globally. Investors, spooked by the scandal, returned, pumping $5 million back into Horizon. The stock climbed 20 points, and bookings surged, customers praising Marcus's integrity. Tanya burst into his office, her braids swinging, her tablet glowing with analytics. "We're back, boss," she said, her grin wide. "The public's with us." Marcus exhaled, his shoulders easing, the weight of the past days lifting. He thought of Aisha, his 16-year-old daughter, who'd texted him a fist bump emoji after the conference. For a moment, he believed he'd turned the corner, that truth had finally cut through Hale's lies. But as he left the office, the sky darkening over Atlanta, a new storm broke. His phone lit up with alerts. Horizon Airways flights across the country were grounded, not by him this time, but by a nationwide flight attendant strike. Picketers swarmed Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, their signs venomous. Tate hates workers. And reinstate Karen Whitlock. Karen, the racist flight attendant he'd fired, stood at the forefront, her blonde hair a beacon in the crowd, her voice booming through a megaphone. "Marcus Tate's a tyrant," she shouted. "He fired me for doing my job!" The crowd roared, their chants laced with slurs that made Marcus's stomach twist. A white man in a flannel shirt spat on the ground as Marcus's car passed, his eyes glinting with hate. Another, a woman in a denim jacket, hurled a brick at a Horizon billboard, shattering the glass. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles pale as he navigated the chaos. The strike wasn't just local, it paralyzed Horizon's operations from Los Angeles to New York, costing millions more. Tanya called, her voice tight. "It's Karen," she said. "The unions made her their poster child. They're calling you anti-worker." Marcus's mind raced, piecing it together. Hale's influence lingered, his money fueling the union's rage, with Karen as their rallying cry. He'd cleared his name, but this was Hale's counterattack, a sledgehammer to cripple Horizon's recovery. Marcus parked at a downtown hotel, his temporary base since protesters had overrun his office. He met with union leaders in a cramped conference room, the air thick with tension. The lead negotiator, a burly man named Tom, leaned forward, his eyes hard. "Reinstate Karen, or we don't fly," he said. Marcus refused, his voice calm but iron. "She disrespected a passenger, disrespected me. Horizon stands for more." He offered reforms instead, better wages, diversity training, a grievance board. After hours of grueling talks, Tom relented, shaking Marcus's hand. The strike ended at dawn, planes rolling back onto runways, passengers cheering as flights resumed. Marcus stood on the tarmac, the morning sun warm on his face, watching a Horizon jet soar into the sky. His phone buzzed with congratulatory texts, and Tanya reported a $10 million booking spike. He felt a flicker of triumph, thinking he'd outmaneuvered Hale's machine. Aisha called, her voice bright. "You're unstoppable, Dad," Marcus laughed, his first in days, picturing her smile. But as he boarded a flight to check operations in Chicago, his phone pinged with a new alert, and his heart sank. A leaked document splashed across Fox News claimed Marcus was a violent deserter during his Air Force service. The report, sourced from classified records, painted him as a coward who'd abandoned his squadron under fire. Veterans groups, once his allies, denounced him, their statements brutal. "Tate's a traitor." Social media exploded, hashtags like Dakar dishonest veteran trending. Marcus stared at the screen, his breath shallow, the plane's hum fading to a dull roar. He'd served 20 years, earned medals for valor, saved lives in Kandahar when his jet was hit. The lie cut deeper than the harassment claim, striking at his core, his pride as a soldier. Tanya texted frantic, "It's Hale again. He's got media contacts pushing this." Marcus's hands trembled, rage and betrayal mixing like oil and fire. The strike's end had been his victory, a hard-fought stand against Karen's racism and Hale's sabotage. But this new attack was a gut punch, turning his military legacy into a weapon. Passengers on the flight whispered, their glances sharp, some recognizing him from the news. A white man in a polo shirt muttered, "Can't trust him," loud enough for Marcus to hear. The flight attendant, a young black woman, gave Marcus a sympathetic nod, but it did little to ease the sting. He landed in Chicago, the city's 85-degree breeze mocking his turmoil. Protesters awaited at O'Hare, smaller but angrier, their signs now personal. "Tate's no hero." A veteran in a camouflage cap spat at Marcus's feet, his voice thick with scorn. "You shamed us all." Marcus kept walking, his posture rigid, but inside, he was fracturing. The strike had cost Horizon millions, but this smear threatened his identity, his place in a community he'd fought for. He thought of his father, who'd taught him to stand tall against hate, and Aisha, who'd faced this lie at school. He couldn't let Hale rewrite his life. In his Chicago hotel, Marcus met Tanya, who'd flown in, her laptop open to an encrypted file. "I've got a lead," she said. "The leak came from a hacker tied to Hale's PR firm. We can trace it." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight, planning his counterstrike. He'd fight the smear, dig up the truth, prove his service. But as he stared out at Lake Michigan, its waves glinting under the moon, the TV blared a new report. A veterans coalition was suing Horizon, claiming Marcus's dishonesty endangered their reputation. The lawsuit demanded $20 million, a sum that could bankrupt the airline. Marcus's victory over the strike, so hard won, was ashes now. Hale's lie spreading like wildfire. The protesters' chants echoed in his mind, a reminder that this war was far from over. Hale's machine was relentless, and Karen's shadow loomed larger than ever. What would it take to stop them, and how much more could Marcus lose? Marcus Tate's Chicago hotel room, a sterile box of beige walls and starched linens, felt like a bunker as he pored over military records under the flicker of a desk lamp. The smear campaign, branding him a violent deserter, had ignited a firestorm, with veterans groups suing Horizon Airways for $20 million, a death knell for his airline. His phone vibrated with threats, each one a shard of hate. "Traitor," one spat. "You'll pay," another growled. But Marcus, his Air Force colonel's grit unyielding, had proof. Tanya, his assistant, had unearthed declassified documents, medals for valor, and testimonies from his squadron, confirming his heroism in Kandahar. With the evidence locked in, Marcus flew back to Atlanta, the 80-degree humidity clinging to his Navy suit as he stepped into Horizon's headquarters. The glass tower buzzed with nervous staff, their whispers trailing him like shadows. He called a press conference, the media room packed with reporters, their cameras glinting like vultures' eyes. Marcus stood tall, his voice a blade cutting through the chaos. "I served my country with honor," he declared, projecting his medals on a screen. "These lies, spread by Richard Hale, won't stand." The documents flashed, undeniable. A Purple Heart, a distinguished flying cross. Reporters scribbled, furiously, their murmurs rising. Within hours, the narrative shifted. Veterans groups retracted their lawsuit, issuing apologies on CNN. Twitter lit up with support. "We're honor Marcus Tate" trending worldwide. A grizzled vet in a leather jacket approached Marcus outside, his handshake firm. "We were wrong, Colonel. You're one of us." Horizon's stock climbed 15 points, and bookings surged, customers flooding back. Tanya, her braids bouncing, rushed into Marcus's office, her tablet glowing. "We're at 10 million in new reservations," she said, her eyes bright. Marcus exhaled, his chest loosening, the weight of the smear lifting. He pictured Aisha, his daughter, watching the news, her pride a beacon in his storm. For a moment he believed he'd reclaimed his legacy, that truth had finally broken Hale's grip. But as he prepared to sue Karen Whitlock for defamation, the woman whose racist sneer had sparked this war, a new blow landed. The Atlanta courthouse, a granite monolith baking under a 92-degree sun, was packed with spectators as Marcus's lawyer, a sharp woman named Carla, presented their case. Karen sat across the room, her blonde hair pinned tight, her face a mask of innocence. Marcus expected a swift win, the evidence of her slurs on the plane undeniable. But the judge, a white man with a hawkish glare, leaned forward, his gavel a hammer of doom. "This case is dismissed," he barked, his voice echoing. "Frivolous litigation, plaintiff to pay $50,000 in court costs." Marcus's breath caught, his fists clenching. Carla's jaw dropped, her papers scattering. The courtroom buzzed, reporters typing furiously. Karen smirked, her eyes glinting with triumph. Marcus's mind raced, piecing it together. Hale's influence, his money, had reached the bench. Tanya in the gallery texted frantically, "Bribe judge, I'm digging." The ruling wasn't just a loss, it was a public humiliation, branding Marcus a troublemaker. As he left the courthouse, protesters swarmed, their signs vicious. "Tate wastes our taxes." A white woman in a red hat screamed, "Go back to where you came from." Another, a man in a denim vest, hurled a soda can, the liquid splashing Marcus's suit. He kept walking, his posture rigid, but the sting burned deeper than the smear. The lawsuit had been his counterstrike. A chance to bury Karen's lies, but Hale's corruption had turned justice into a weapon. That night, Marcus returned to his suburban home, a modest brick house now a fortress against the chaos. He stepped inside, the air cool at 75 degrees, and froze. The living room was trashed, furniture overturned, walls spray-painted, with slurs. Traitor, outsider. Glass crunched under his shoes, a shattered photo of Aisha lying in the wreckage. His heart pounded, rage and fear colliding. Aisha was safe at a friend's, but this violation, this invasion, was personal. Neighbors, peering from their windows, offered no help, their silence a betrayal. Marcus called Tanya, his voice low. "Find out who did this." She arrived within the hour, her laptop open, her eyes fierce. "It's Hale's doing," she said. "His PR firm's been paying local thugs. And there's more." She showed him a grainy video from Horizon's security system. A hidden camera in his office planted in the ceiling, its lens glinting like a spider's eye. Marcus's blood ran cold. Hale wasn't just bribing judges. He was watching, plotting, waiting. The camera had captured his every move, every call, every plan. Marcus's lawsuit victory, his reclaimed honor, was a mirage, shattered by this ambush. The court's fine drained Horizon's reserves, pushing losses to 18 million. The Savory vandalism wasn't just an attack, it was a message. Nowhere was safe. Marcus stood in his ruined living room, the spray paint's stench sharp, memories flooding of his Air Force days, facing prejudice in the ranks, proving himself through courage. This was worse, a war where the enemy owned the battlefield. Hote thought of Aisha, how she'd see this wreckage, her home defiled. He couldn't let Hale win, couldn't let this break him. Tanya traced the camera's signal, her fingers flying. "It's linked to Hale's firm," she said. "We can expose it." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight, planning his next move. He'd take the footage public, shame Hale, rally his supporters. But as he swept up the glass, his phone buzzed with a news alert. Horizon CEO's lawsuit backfires, sparks outrage. The anchor, her voice slick with bias, framed Marcus as a reckless agitator, the fine proof of his instability. Protesters grew bolder, their chants now a nightly ritual outside his home. Horizon stock dipped again, investors spooked by the court's ruling. Marcus's victory over the smear, so hard-fought, was crumbling. Hale's machine tightening, its grip. The hidden camera was a chilling reminder. Hale saw everything, and his next strike would be worse. Marcus stood in the dark, the weight of the fight heavier than ever, knowing he'd have to outsmart an enemy who played by no rules. What was Hale planning, and how much closer would this war come to breaking him? Marcus Tate's Atlanta office, a glass-walled sanctuary overlooking the city's twinkling runways, felt like a war zone as he stared at the hidden camera's footage, its grainy lens exposing Richard Hale's surveillance. The vandalism of his home, slurs scrawled across his walls, and the court's $50,000 fine had pushed Horizon Airways' losses to 18 million, a bleeding wound threatening his empire. His phone buzzed with hate, messages like, "You don't belong," searing his mind. But Marcus, his Air Force colonel's steel unbroken, had a plan. Tanya, his assistant, had traced the camera to Hale's PR firm, and Marcus was ready to strike back. He called a press conference, the media room a hive of flashing cameras and eager reporters. The 90-degree Atlanta heat pressed through the windows as Marcus stood at the podium, his navy suit crisp, his voice a thunderclap. "Hale's been watching me," he declared, playing the footage. The camera's eerie glow filled the screen, Hale's voice faintly audible, plotting to bury Tate. Reporters gasped, their phones buzzing with live tweets. Within hours, the story exploded. Hale exposed, trending globally. CNN ran the clip on loop, pundits demanding Hale's resignation. Horizon's board, cornered by public outrage, voted unanimously to oust Hale, his silver-haired smirk nowhere in sight. Investors rallied, pumping 10 million into the airline, and the stock soared 25 points. Customers flooded bookings, praising Marcus's courage. Tanya burst into his office, her tablet glowing, her braids swinging. "We're back on top, boss," she said, her grin infectious. Marcus leaned back in his chair, the city's lights a warm glow outside, his chest loosening. He thought of Aisha, his daughter, safe now, her texts full of pride. The camera's exposure had been a masterstroke, a victory that felt final, like ejecting from a burning jet and landing safe. For a moment, he believed he'd dismantled Hale's machine, that Horizon was his again. But as he sipped coffee, the office's 70-degree air turning cold, a new alert shattered his calm. Karen Whitlock, the racist flight attendant whose sneer had sparked this war, appeared on a Fox News segment, her blonde hair sleek, her voice dripping with venom. "I'm Richard Hale's niece," she revealed, her eyes glinting. "Marcus Tate stole Horizon from hardworking Americans." The bombshell hit like a missile, her words igniting a shareholder revolt. Within hours, a faction of investors, egged on by Karen's lies, demanded Marcus's resignation as CEO. His phone flooded with emails from board members, once allies, now wavering. "Step down, Marcus, for stability." Tanya, pale, showed him a live feed. Armed security clad in black tactical gear stormed Horizon's headquarters, their boots thundering on the marble floor. The guards, hired by Hale's loyalists, locked Marcus out, barring his office door with a steel chain. Employees fled, their faces etched with fear as the guards barked orders claiming new management. Marcus, stranded in a nearby hotel, watched the chaos unfold on CNN, his heart pounding. The coup wasn't just a power grab, it was a public execution, stripping him of his life's work. Protesters, revived by Karen's broadcast, swarmed the airport, their signs now apocalyptic. "Tate's time is up." A white man in a trucker hat hurled a rock at a Horizon jet, cracking its window, while a woman in a sundress screamed, "He's no CEO!" Marcus's mind raced, his military training kicking in. He'd faced ambushes before, like the night his squadron was pinned down in Iraq, bullets tearing through the dark. This was different, a corporate battlefield where Hale's shadow loomed, larger than ever. Tanya, working from a laptop in the hotel's cramped conference room, uncovered a lead. "Hale's still pulling strings," she said, her voice low. "He's got offshore accounts funding this." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight, his mind shifting to offense. He'd built Horizon's servers himself, a failsafe from his tech-savvy Air Force days. From the hotel, he hacked into the company's system, his fingers flying over a borrowed laptop, the screen's glow casting shadows on his face. He froze the coup, locking shareholder accounts and halting the guards' payroll. The security team, unpaid, abandoned their posts, the steel chain clattering to the floor. Employees cheered, streaming the victory on social media. Tate fights back trending. Marcus stood, his pulse steady, watching the live feed as his staff reclaimed the headquarters. The coup was stalled, a hard-won triumph that felt like salvation. He thought of his father, who'd faced racism with quiet strength, and Aisha, who'd see her dad unbowed. But as he planned to return, Tanya's phone pinged with a new alert, and her face fell. Karen's broadcast hadn't just sparked the coup. It had rallied a new wave of hate, her claim of stolen Horizon fueling racist conspiracies. A local radio host, his voice thick with scorn, called Marcus an outsider who cheated his way up. The stock, briefly soaring, dipped 10 points as investors panicked again. Protesters grew bolder, their chants a nightly roar outside Marcus's hotel. Worse, Tanya found a leaked email from Hale, sent from an encrypted server, promising escalation. Marcus's hack had saved Horizon for now, but Karen's familial tie to Hale revealed a deeper conspiracy, one he hadn't seen coming. The armed takeover wasn't just a flex, it was a warning. Hale's machine ready to strike harder. Marcus stood in the hotel's dim light, Lake Michigan's waves glinting outside, the weight of the fight heavier than ever. He'd stopped the coup, but at what cost? His home was trashed, his airline teetered, and Hale's niece was a wild card, her venom spreading faster than he could counter. He remembered his Air Force oath to protect and serve and steeled himself for the next battle. Tomorrow he'd rally his team, expose Karen's lies, fight for his company. But as he stared at the city, the protesters' torches flickering, Below, he knew Hale's next move would be brutal, a strike to break him for good. If you're stunned by Karen's betrayal as Hale's niece, comment number 1 to stand against this racist coup. Hit like if you're rooting for Marcus to reclaim his empire and subscribe to see his next move. What will Hale and Karen unleash now, and can Marcus survive their deadliest attack yet? Marcus Tate's hotel room, a stark cube of white walls and stiff sheets overlooking Lake Michigan, thrummed with tension as he watched Horizon Airways servers stabilize, his hack having stalled the corporate coup. The armed guards had fled, and his employees' cheers echoed online. Tate fights back trending with 10 million views. His navy suit hung loose, the 85-degree Chicago heat seeping through the window, but his Air Force colonel's resolve burned brighter than ever. Karen Whitlock's bombshell, revealing herself as Richard Hale's niece, had fueled a racist shareholder revolt, costing Horizon $20 million in losses. Hate mail flooded his phone, slurs like thief and outsider clawing at his spirit. But Marcus had outsmarted Hale's takeover, locking the system with a few keystrokes, a skill honed in military tech ops. By dawn, he returned to Atlanta, landing at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport under a 90-degree sun. Horizon's headquarters, a glass tower glinting like a beacon, buzzed with renewed energy. Staff greeted him with fist bumps, their faith restored. Tanya, his assistant, met him in the lobby, her tablet glowing, her braids tight. "Stock's up 15 points, she said, her voice steady. "Bookings are climbing, 12 million and counting." Marcus nodded, his chest easing. The coup's defeat a hard-won victory. Social media flipped, users praising his ingenuity, CNN calling him the CEO who fought back. A black pilot, his uniform crisp, saluted Marcus in the hallway, his eyes proud. Marcus thought of Aisha, his daughter, safe with friends, her texts full of heart emojis. For a moment, he believed he'd reclaimed his airline, that his hack had broken Hale's grip. But as he settled into his office, the city's skyline, a jagged glow, a new alert shattered his calm. Karen, now a fiery pundit on a right-wing streaming channel, stood before a live audience, her blonde hair gleaming, her voice a venomous whip. "Marcus Tate stole Horizon from honest workers," she declared, her eyes glinting. "He's no hero, just a conman in a suit." The crowd roared, their applause a tidal wave. She projected a doctored photo of Marcus, his face twisted into a scowl, labeled, "The Real Tate." Within minutes, her words ignited a mob, hundreds converging. On Horizon's headquarters, protesters, their faces contorted with rage, swarmed the building, their torches casting flickering shadows on the glass. Signs screamed, "Tate's a fraud!" and "Take back Horizon!" A white man in a flannel shirt smashed a bottle against the entrance, glass exploding like shrapnel, while a woman in a red cap chanted slurs, her voice raw. Marcus watched from his office, the 70-degree air chilling his skin, his pulse hammering. Security barred the doors, but the mob's roar shook the walls, a primal hate fueled by Karen's lies. Tanya, her laptop open, traced the broadcasts. Funding. "It's Hale," she said, her voice low. "His offshore accounts paid for this. He's not done." Marcus's mind raced, memories of Iraq flashing, his squadron pinned under fire, his calm saving lives. This was a different ambush, a racist mob Hale had unleashed to bury him. His phone buzzed with a CNN alert. Horizon HQ under siege. The anchor, her tone grave, reported escalating violence, framing Marcus as the cause. Stock dipped, 10 points, investors spooked by the chaos. Employees, once jubilant, huddled in break rooms, their faces pale. Marcus knew he had to act, to save his people, his airline. He slipped into a service elevator, his heart pounding, and navigated a maze of maintenance tunnels, the air thick with dust and 80-degree heat. His shoes scuffed the concrete, each step a gamble as the mob's chants echoed above. He emerged, in a back alley, the city's neon glow a stark contrast to the danger. Security whisked him to a safe house, a nondescript apartment 10 miles away, its blinds drawn tight. Tanya met him there, her laptop humming. "You're safe," she said, but her eyes betrayed worry. Marcus exhaled, his escape a fleeting triumph, his mind already plotting. He'd expose Karen's lies, rally his supporters, fight back. But as he checked his phone, a new alert froze his blood. Hale had struck again, this time with surgical precision. A banking app notification showed his accounts, personal and corporate, frozen, every cent locked by a federal order. Horizon's funds, $20 million in reserves, were untouchable, stranding operations. His personal savings, meant for Aisha's college, were gone. The screen flashed a legal notice: suspected fraud, pending investigation. Marcus's breath hitched, his hands trembling. Tanya dug into the order, her fingers flying. "It's Hale," she said. "He's got a contact in the Treasury Department. This is retaliation." Marcus sank into a chair, the safe house's dim light casting shadows on his face. The mob's attack had been a spectacle, but this financial ruin was a guillotine, cutting him off from everything. Protesters hadn't just targeted Horizon, they'd followed him, a smaller group now circling the safe house, their torches visible through the blinds. A man's voice bellowed, "You can't hide, Tate." A brick crashed through the window, glass shattering across the floor, the word fraud scrawled on it. Marcus's heart raced, fear for Aisha spiking. She was safe, but for how long? The escape from the mob had saved his life, but Hale's financial strike was a death blow, leaving him penniless, his airline paralyzed. He thought of his father, enduring racism to keep their family afloat, and his Air Force days, proving himself against prejudice. This was a war where money was the weapon, and Hale held the arsenal. Horizon's losses now hit $25 million, with flights grounded again, customers canceling in droves. Social media turned uglier, users calling Marcus a bankrupt con, Karen's broadcast looping like a virus. A local TV anchor, his voice slick, predicted Horizon's collapse, framing Marcus as a cautionary tale. Tanya pulled up a lead, an encrypted email from Hale's firm hinting at more escalation. Marcus's hack had stopped the coup, but this financial sabotage was a deeper cut, stripping his power, his resources. He stood, his jaw tight, planning his counterstrike. He'd trace the banking order, expose Hale's corruption, rally his team. But as he stared at the shattered window, the protesters' chants a low growl outside, he felt the walls closing in. The mob had been a physical threat, but this was existential. Hale's machine tightening its chokehold. Marcus's victory, so hard-fought, was ashes now, his empire teetering on the edge. What would Hale's next move cost him, and could he fight without a dime to his name? Marcus Tate crouched in the Atlanta safe house, a dim apartment with peeling wallpaper and a musty 70-degree chill, the protesters' torches flickering through shattered blinds. Richard Hale's financial ambush had frozen his bank accounts, personal and corporate, leaving Horizon Airways paralyzed with $25 million in losses. His phone buzzed with slurs, messages like bankrupt fraud slicing deep, but his Air Force colonel's grit held firm. The mob's brick, scrawled with fraud, lay on the floor, a reminder of Karen Whitlock's venomous broadcast that had painted him as a thief. Marcus, penniless, needed help, and only one name came to mind: Jamal Carter, a childhood friend turned venture capitalist, a black man who'd risen from their old Decatur neighborhood to a penthouse empire. Jamal had backed Horizon's early war days, his loans keeping Marcus's dream alive. Marcus dialed, his voice low, the safe house's shadow swallowing him. "I'm in trouble, man," he said. "Hale's got me broke. I need a lifeline." Jamal's voice, warm and steady, crackled through. "I got you, brother. Meet me downtown, 2 hours." Marcus slipped out, dodging protesters' chants, their voices a guttural roar 10 miles from Horizon's headquarters. The 90-degree Atlanta night clung to his navy hoodie, a disguise for a man whose face was plastered on every news screen. He met Jamal in a sleek high-rise, the city's skyline a glittering taunt through the windows. Jamal, his suit tailored, his beard trimmed, gripped Marcus's hand, his eyes fierce. $5 million, no strings," he said, wiring the funds from a tablet. "Take Hale down." Marcus exhaled, his shoulders easing, the money a lifeline to save Horizon. With Jamal's cash, he hired a forensic accountant, a wiry woman named Priya, who traced Hale's banking freeze to a corrupt Treasury official. Marcus leaked the evidence to CNN, his fingers trembling as he hit send. The story broke at dawn, headlines screaming, "Horizon CEO exposes government fraud." The Treasury unfroze his accounts, 20 million flowing back to Horizon. Social media flipped, users cheering Tate strikes again, and bookings surged, 15 million in new reservations. Investors, spooked by the freeze, returned, the stock climbing 20 points. Marcus stood in Horizon's glass lobby, the sun blazing through, his team applauding as flights resumed. Tanya, her braids swinging, showed him the analytics, her grin wide. "We're alive, boss," she said. He thought of Aisha, safe with friends, her texts full of pride. The unfrozen funds felt like salvation, a victory carved from desperation. He'd outsmarted Hale, turned a death blow into a comeback, his Air Force instincts guiding him through the chaos. For a moment, he believed he'd broken the cycle, that Jamal's trust had saved him. But as he left the office, the 88-degree dusk heavy with humidity, a new alert gutted him. A whistleblower, anonymous, had sent the IRS a dossier claiming Marcus evaded taxes, hiding millions in offshore accounts. The evidence, doctored ledgers and fake emails, pointed to Marcus's signature. Before he could react, IRS agents stormed his home, a modest brick house still scarred from vandalism. Their boots thudded on the hardwood, flashlights slicing the dark as news vans parked outside, cameras rolling live. "Marcus Tate, you're under arrest," an agent barked, cuffs snapping on his wrists. The broadcast hit every network, CNN, looping the raid, the anchor's voice grim. "Horizon CEO faces tax fraud charges." Marcus's heart pounded, his mind reeling. The safe house, the mob, Hale's freeze, all paled against this. He'd never seen those ledgers, never touched an offshore account. As the agents shoved him into a van, the crowd jeered, a white man in a baseball cap spitting, "Crook!" A black teenager, filming on his phone, shook his head, his eyes betrayed. Marcus's stomach twisted, the cuffs biting his skin. In the precinct, a cold cell with a 70-degree draft, Tanya slipped him a burner phone, her voice low. "It's Jamal," she whispered, her eyes wide. "He planted the evidence. Karen paid him, 2 million wired last week." Marcus's breath caught, betrayal cutting deeper than the cuffs. Jamal, his brother from the block, the man who'd shared his dreams, had sold him out. The IRS dossier wasn't just a lie, it was a trap. Karen's hand guiding Hale's knife. Marcus's mind flashed to their childhood, racing bikes through Decatur, promising to lift each other up. Jamal's handshake, his warm words, had been a performance, a betrayal colder than Hale's schemes. The raid wasn't just an arrest. It was a public crucifixion, stripping Marcus's credibility, his freedom. Social media turned vicious, users calling him a greedy thug. The hashtag #Tate the tax cheat trending. Horizon stock plummeted 15 points, investors fleeing again, losses hitting 30 million. Protesters, emboldened, swarmed the precinct, their signs now personal. "Jail Tate," a local radio host, his voice dripping with scorn, called Marcus a disgrace to his race. Marcus sat in the cell, the concrete bench hard, his Air Force medals a distant memory. He'd fought prejudice in the ranks, flown through fire in Kandahar, built Horizon from nothing. But this, Jamal's knife in his back, was a wound he hadn't seen coming. The unfrozen accounts, the restored funds, had been a mirage, a setup for this fall. He thought of Aisha, how she'd hear this lie. Her dad branded a criminal. He couldn't let her see him broken. Tanya, working from a hotel, dug into Jamal's finances, her laptop humming. "We can prove he's dirty," she said through the burner. "Give me a day." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight, planning his defense. He'd fight the charges, expose Jamal, claw his way back. But as the cell's fluorescent buzzed, a TV in the guardroom blared a new report. Horizon faces bankruptcy. Amid CEO's arrest, the anchor predicted collapse within days, framing Marcus as a reckless fraud. Protesters' chants echoed outside, a nightly ritual now, their torches aglow through the precinct's bars. Horizon's losses mounted, flights grounded again, customers canceling in droves. The IRS raid wasn't just a legal blow, it was a spectacle. Karen's victory lap, Hale's shadow looming larger than ever. Marcus's triumph, so hard won, was dust, his empire and freedom hanging by a thread. What would Karen's next strike unleash, and could he trust anyone to fight back? Marcus Tate sat on a cold metal bench in an Atlanta precinct cell, the 70-degree air heavy with the stink of bleach and despair. The IRS raid, sparked by Jamal's betrayal and Karen Whitlock's $2 million bribe, had branded him a tax fraud, his cuffs a public shackle broadcast live on CNN. Horizon Airways teetered, $30 million in losses bleeding it dry, its stock plummeting 15 points. His phone confiscated, couldn't shield him from the protesters outside, their chants of jail Tate, a relentless drum. But Marcus, his Air Force colonel's steel unbowed, clung to hope. Carla, his lawyer, a fierce woman with a razor-sharp mind, slipped into the cell block, her heels clicking on concrete. "We've got proof," she whispered, sliding him a burner phone. "Jamal's ledgers are fake. Bank records show Karen's payment." Marcus's pulse quickened, his hands steady despite the cuffs. Carla filed an emergency motion, presenting the evidence to a judge. By dawn, the courtroom, a packed arena under a 90-degree Atlanta sun, buzzed with reporters, their cameras glinting like hawks' eyes. Carla shredded the IRS case, her voice a scalpel, exposing the doctored emails as fabrications. The judge, a black woman with a no-nonsense glare, banged her gavel. "Charges dismissed," she declared. "Marcus, Tate is free." The gallery erupted, supporters cheering, a black teenager in a hoodie pumping his fist. Marcus walked out, the sun blazing on his navy suit, crowds parting as he breathed free air. Social media flipped. Free Tate trending with 12 million views, users praising his resilience. Veterans groups, once betrayed by Hale's smear, rallied, their apologies flooding his email. Horizon's stock climbed 10 points and bookings trickled back, 5 million in new reservations. Tanya met him at Horizon's headquarters, her braids tight, her tablet glowing. "We're fighting, boss," she said, her eyes fierce. Marcus stood in the glass lobby, the city skyline a hopeful glow, thinking of Aisha, his daughter, safe and proud. The dismissal felt like salvation, a victory carved from a cell's darkness. He'd outsmarted Jamal's knife, Karen's bribe, Hale's machine, his Air Force instincts guiding him through betrayal. For a moment he believed he'd reclaimed his freedom. That truth had finally shattered the lies. But as he boarded a Horizon flight to Miami, a routine check on operations, a new trap sprang. The plane, cruising at 30,000 feet, shuddered as air marshals stormed the cabin, their badges flashing, guns drawn. Passengers gasped, a white woman in a sundress clutching her purse, a black man in a tracksuit filming on his phone. "Marcus Tate, you're under arrest," the lead marshal barked, his voice cutting through the hum. "Drug trafficking." Marcus's heart stopped, his mind reeling. The marshals claimed cocaine, 10 pounds, was found in the plane's cargo, hidden in Horizon's luggage system, tied to Marcus's name. The plane diverted, making an emergency landing in Orlando, its tires screeching on the tarmac under an 88-degree dusk. Marcus, cuffed again, was hauled off, cameras swarming, CNN broadcasting live. Horizon CEO faces life sentence. The evidence, a forged manifest with Marcus's signature, was airtight, planted with surgical precision. Protesters awaited at the Orlando precinct, their signs apocalyptic. "Tate's a dealer." A white man in a polo shirt spat, "Lock him up." A Latina teenager, her eyes wide, whispered, "He's innocent." Marcus's stomach twisted, the cuffs tighter than before. He'd never touched drugs, never seen the manifest. Tanya, calling on a smuggled burner, confirmed the worst. "It's Hale," she said, her voice shaking. "He's back. Funding." This from the shadows. The drugs were planted. Marcus's breath hitched, rage and fear colliding. The courtroom victory, his walk to freedom, had been a setup, a fleeting hope before Hale's deadliest strike. The drug charge wasn't just a lie, it was a life sentence, threatening to bury him forever. Social media turned vicious, users calling him a kingpin. Cross Tate, the trafficker, trending. Horizon stock crashed 20 points, losses hitting 40 million, flights grounding again. Investors fled and customers canceled. The airline's name now toxic. A local TV anchor, her voice slick, framed Marcus as a criminal mastermind, her words a knife in his legacy. Marcus sat in a new cell, its 72-degree chill seeping into his bones, the concrete walls closing in. He'd flown through, fire in Kandahar, built Horizon from nothing, faced prejudice at every turn. But this, Hale's frame-up, was a guillotine, cutting his freedom, his empire, his name. He thought of Aisha, how she'd hear this lie. Her dad branded a drug lord. He couldn't let her see him broken. Carla, working from Atlanta, dug into the manifest, her voice fierce on the burner. "We'll crack this," she said. "The cargo logs don't add up." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight, planning his fight. He'd expose the plant, trace Hale's shadow, claw his way out. But as the cell's fluorescent buzzed, a guard's radio blared a new report. Horizon faces federal seizure over CEO's crimes. The anchor predicted the airline's end, framing Marcus as its ruin. Protesters' chants grew louder, their torches aglow through the bars. The drug charge wasn't just a legal blow, it was a death sentence for Horizon, Karen's victory, Hale's checkmate. Marcus's triumph, so hard won, was dust, his future hanging by a thread. If you're outraged by Hale's ruthless frame-up, comment number 1 to demand justice for Marcus. Hit like if you believe he can fight this lie and subscribe to follow his battle against corruption. What will Hale's shadow empire do next, and can Marcus escape a life behind bars? Marcus Tate's Orlando cell, a claustrophobic box of gray concrete and a 70-degree chill, echoed with the clank of steel bars as he sat, wrists raw from cuffs. The drug trafficking charge, a vicious lie planted by Richard Hale, had landed. Him here, facing a life sentence while Horizon Airways bled 40 million in losses, its stock a ghost of itself. Protesters' chants, "Tate's a dealer," pierced the night, their torches a faint glow through the precinct's slits. His phone, gone, couldn't shield him from the hate-flooding social media. Tate the trafficker branding him a kingpin. But Marcus, his Air Force colonel's resolve a flickering flame, clung to a plan. Carla, his lawyer, worked tirelessly, her voice crackling through a smuggled burner. "The cargo logs are off," she said. "The drugs were planted post-flight." By dawn, she'd cracked the case, uncovering tampered manifests and a bribed cargo handler's confession. The evidence, airtight, was rushed to court. The Orlando courtroom, packed under an 87-degree sun, buzzed with reporters, their cameras glinting like predators' eyes. Carla presented the proof, her voice a blade, dismantling the prosecution's lies. The judge, a stern Latino man, banged his gavel. "Charges dismissed," he declared. "Marcus Tate is free." The gallery erupted, a black woman in a sundress, cheering, a white man in a polo shirt scowling. Marcus walked out, the sun searing his navy suit, crowds parting as he breathed free air. Supporters mobbed him, a veteran in a wheelchair saluting, his eyes proud. Social media flipped. Tate cleared trending with 15 million views, users hailing his fight. Horizon stock climbed 12 points, and bookings ticked up, 3 million in new reservations. Marcus flew back to Atlanta, landing at Hartsfield-Jackson, under a 90-degree dusk. Tanya met him at Horizon's headquarters, her braids tight, her tablet glowing. "We're hanging on, boss," she said, her voice steady. He called a press conference, the media room a hive of flashing lights. "I'm innocent," Marcus declared, his voice booming. "Hale's lies won't break us." The crowd roared. Reporters typing furiously, CNN broadcasting live. Veterans groups rallied, their support flooding his email. Customers returned, praising Horizon's resilience, and the stock gained another 10 points. Marcus stood in his office, the city's skyline a hopeful shimmer, thinking of Aisha, his daughter, safe and texting heart emojis. The dismissal felt like a lifeline, a victory forged in a cell's darkness. He'd outsmarted Hale's frame-up, his Air Force instincts guiding him through the storm. For a moment he believed he'd reclaimed his voice, that truth had shattered the lies. But as he left the press conference, the 85-degree night heavy with humidity, a new assault struck. Karen Whitlock, now a talk show host on a right-wing network, launched a media blackout, her blonde hair gleaming as she bribed major outlets to bury Marcus's story. CNN, once his ally, dropped the coverage, their anchors silent. MSNBC, Fox, even local stations followed, their screens blank on Horizon's fight. Social media, once a battleground of support, turned eerie. Posts about Marcus vanishing, algorithms throttling Tate cleared. Karen's show, Truth Unveiled, aired nightly, her voice a venomous whip. "Tate's a con," she sneered, her audience nodding. Horizon's a front for crime. The blackout wasn't just silence, it was erasure, wiping Marcus's victory from the public's mind. Worse, racist trolls, fueled by Karen's lies, doxed his family, leaking Aisha's school address and his sister's workplace. Marcus moved them to a safe house, a cramped apartment 20 miles from Atlanta, its blinds drawn tight. Aisha, her eyes red, hugged him, her voice small. "Why do they hate us, Dad?" Marcus's heart broke, his arms tight around her, unable to answer. The safe house's 72-degree air felt suffocating, the weight of his daughter's fear crushing. Him, Tanya, working from a laptop, traced the blackout's funding. "It's Hale," she said, her voice low. "He's a shadow financier now, wiring millions to networks." Marcus's stomach twisted, rage flaring. The drug charge had been a sledgehammer, but this blackout was a scalpel, cutting his voice, his family's safety. Protesters, emboldened, swarmed the safe house, their signs uglier. "Tate's a menace!" A white man in a trucker hat hurled a bottle, shattering it against the door, while a woman in a red scarf screamed slurs, her voice raw. Marcus's mind flashed to Kandahar, his jet hit, his calm saving his squad. This was a different war, Hale's. Machine erasing him, Karen's lies poisoning the air. Horizon's losses hit 45 million. Flights grounding again, customers fleeing the criminal brand. Investors bailed, the stock crashing 15 points. A local radio host, his voice slick, called Marcus a ghost of a CEO, predicting Horizon's end. Marcus, sleepless, dug with Tanya, their laptops humming in the safe house's dim light. She found a whistleblower, a network intern who'd seen Hale's bribes, emails detailing payments to silence Marcus's story. The intern, a nervous 20-year-old, sent encrypted files, revealing Hale's offshore accounts, millions funneled to media moguls. Marcus's pulse quickened, his Air Force training kicking in. He'd leak the emails, break the blackout, rally his supporters. But as he planned, a TV in the safe house blared a new report. Horizon faces federal probe over CEO's ties. The anchor, her tone grave, linked Marcus to shady offshore deals, twisting the whistleblower's files against him. Protesters, chants grew louder, their torches aglow through the blinds. The blackout wasn't just silencing him, it was rewriting him, Hale's shadow turning truth into lies. Marcus stood, his jaw tight, thinking of Aisha, her future at stake. He'd fought prejudice in the ranks, built Horizon from nothing, faced betrayal at every turn. This, Hale's erasure, was a new low, threatening his family, his legacy. The press conference, his moment of triumph, was a mirage, buried by Karen's blackout. He'd expose the bribes, fight for his voice, but the safe house's walls felt closer, Hale's machine relentless. What would Hale's next strike steal? And could Marcus protect his family from the fallout? Marcus Tate hunched over a laptop in the Atlanta safe house, its cramped 72-degree air thick with the scent of stale coffee and fear. The media blackout, orchestrated by Karen Whitlock and funded by Richard Hale's offshore millions, had erased his press conference victory, silencing his truth while trolls doxed his family, forcing Aisha and his sister into hiding. Horizon Airways bled 45 million, its stock a shadow, flights grounded as customers fled. Protesters' chants, "Tate's a menace," echoed outside, their torches flickering through the blinds. But Marcus, his Air Force colonels, resolve a steel core, had a weapon, the whistleblower's emails, proof of Hale's bribes to networks. He leaked them to a rogue journalist, a young black woman named Keisha, who blasted the files across independent platforms. By dawn, the story broke, the Hale bribes trending with 20 million views. CNN, shamed, resumed coverage, their anchors dissecting Hale's accounts. The FBI launched a probe, agents raiding Hale's shadow firm under a 90-degree Atlanta sun. Communities rallied, Black, Latino, and Asian groups boycotting Karen's show. Truth unveiled, its ratings crashing. Social media flipped, users cheering Quarren Tate rises, and Horizon's stock climbed 15 points. Bookings surged, 10 million in new reservations, customers praising Marcus's fight. Marcus emerged from the safe house, his navy suit crisp, and stood at Horizon's headquarters, the glass tower a beacon. Supporters mobbed him, a Latina teacher hugging him, a black veteran saluting, their eyes fierce. Tanya, her braids swinging, showed him the analytics, her grin wide. "We're back." "Boss," she said. Marcus called a rally, the airport's plaza packed with thousands, their signs bold. "Stand with Tate!" He spoke, his voice booming through a megaphone. "We won't be silenced," he declared, the crowd roaring. The governor, a pragmatic, white man, tweeted support, praising Marcus's resilience. Horizon's flights resumed, jets soaring into the dusk, and the stock gained another 10 points. Marcus stood on the tarmac, the 88-degree breeze warm, thinking of Aisha, now safe, her texts full of pride. The FBI probe felt like justice, a victory forged in the safe house's shadows. He'd outsmarted Hale's blackout, his Air Force instincts breaking the silence. For a moment he believed he'd turned the tide, that the community's uprising had shattered Hale's grip. But as night fell, a new horror struck. Hale, a shadow financier with endless reach, hired mercenaries, black-clad figures with military precision, to attack Marcus's supporters. A community center in East Atlanta, a hub for the rally, exploded in a fireball, its brick walls crumbling under a 90-degree moon. The blast, broadcast live on local news, killed 2 organizers, a black pastor and a Latino activist, their faces flashing on screens. Marcus, at Horizon's headquarters, watched the footage, his heart shattering, the screams echoing in his mind. Sirens wailed, the city's glow dimming with grief. He rushed to the scene, the air thick with smoke and 85-degree heat, debris crunching under his shoes. Survivors wept. A black woman in a torn dress clutching a child, a white firefighter shaking his head. Marcus helped carry stretchers, his hands trembling, guilt crushing him. The rally, his triumph, had drawn Hale's wrath, and innocence had paid. Social media turned chaotic, some blaming Marcus, Showers Tate brings death trending, while others mourned, Showers stand strong rising. Horizon stock dipped 5 points, investors spooked by the violence. Protesters, fueled by Karen's lies, swarmed, the rubble their signs vicious. "Tate's a killer!" A white man in a denim jacket hurled a rock, grazing Marcus's shoulder, while a woman in a red scarf screamed, "You caused this!" Marcus's stomach twisted, the pastor's smile haunting him. He'd fought for justice, but Hale's mercenaries had turned his victory into a graveyard. Tanya at the safe house dug into the attack, her laptop humming. "Hale's behind it," she said, her voice low. The mercenaries were paid through his accounts. But a worse blow landed. Karen on her show manipulated the FBI probe, leaking doctored texts claiming Marcus's allies were terrorists plotting the bombing. The FBI swayed, dropped Hale's case, issuing warrants for Marcus's supporters, branding them extremists. Agents raided homes, cuffing a black organizer and a Latino student. Their arrests live on CNN. The anchor, her voice slick, framed Marcus as a magnet for violence, predicting Horizon's collapse. Marcus stood in the safe house, the blinds drawn, Aisha's hug a fleeting anchor. The uprising, his moment of hope, was ashes. Hale's mercenaries and Karen's lies rewriting his fight. Horizon's losses hit 50 million, flights faltering, customers canceling again. The stock crashed. 10 points, investors fleeing the terrorist brand. A local radio host, his voice venomous, called Marcus a danger to Atlanta, urging his exile. Marcus's mind flashed to Kandahar, his jet hit, his calm saving lives. This was a war where innocents died, Hale's machine unstoppable. He thought of his father, enduring racism with quiet strength, and Aisha, her future at stake. Tanya found a lead, a mercenary's burner phone with Hale's number. "We can trace it," she said, her eyes fierce. Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. Planning his counterstrike, he'd expose the mercenaries, free his allies, fight for the dead. But as the safe house's TV blared, a new report hit. Horizon faces federal shutdown over terror links. The anchor predicted its end, framing Marcus as a warlord. Protesters' chants grew louder, their torches aglow through the blinds. The bombing wasn't just a tragedy, it was Hale's checkmate, Karen's victory, turning Marcus's movement into a curse. His triumph, so hard won, was buried, his allies cuffed, his airline dying. What would Hale's next blow destroy, and could Marcus save his people from the wreckage? Marcus Tate stood in the Atlanta safe house, its 72-degree air heavy with the stench of smoke and betrayal, the community center's bombing a fresh wound. Richard Hale's mercenaries had killed 2 organizers, and Karen Whitlock's lies had framed Marcus's allies as terrorists, landing them in FBI cuffs. Horizon Airways bled 50 million, its stock a whisper, flights grounded as customers fled. Protesters' chants, "Tate's a killer," roared outside, their torches casting jagged shadows through the blinds. But Marcus, his Air Force colonels, steel unyielding, had a lead, a mercenary's burner phone with Hale's number. Tanya, her braids tight, traced it to a server, her laptop humming. "We can free your allies," she said, her eyes fierce. Marcus leaked the phone's logs to Keisha, the rogue journalist, who blasted them online. By dawn, the story exploded. Free Tate's allies trending with 25 million views. The FBI, shamed, released the organizers, a black woman and Latino student, their handcuffs clattering free. Crowds cheered outside the precinct, a black pastor raising a fist, a Latina teacher weeping. Marcus organized a protest, Atlanta's streets packed with 10,000, their signs bold. "Justice for Horizon," he spoke, his voice a thunderclap through a megaphone. "We won't bow," he declared, the crowd roaring. The governor, a white man with a calculated smile, endorsed Marcus on CNN, praising his unbreakable spirit. Horizon stock climbed 20 points, and bookings surged, 15 million in new reservations. Customers returned, praising the airline's fight, and flights resumed, jets soaring into a 90-degree dusk. Marcus stood on the protest stage, the city's skyline a hopeful glow, thinking of Aisha, his daughter, now safe, her texts full of fire. The Allies' release felt like a tidal wave, a victory forged in the safe house's shadows. He'd outsmarted Hale's lies, his Air Force instincts shattering the terrorist frame-up. For a moment, he believed the uprising had broken Hale's machine. That Horizon was his again. But as night fell, a new terror struck. Karen, her blonde hair gleaming on her talk show set, aired a chilling ultimatum. "Resign, Tate, or your daughter pays." Hours later, Aisha vanished, her phone offline, her friend's house empty. Marcus's heart stopped, his breath shallow, the safe house's walls closing in. Tanya, pale, found a lead. A grainy video of Aisha, blindfolded, in a van. Karen's, voice audible, barking orders. The trail led to an abandoned hangar 30 miles from Atlanta, its rusted walls hidden in a pine forest under an 87-degree moon. Marcus, driven by rage and fear, slipped out, his navy hoodie a disguise, the protesters' chants fading behind him. He called Carla, his lawyer, who rallied a small team, a black ex-cop named Dre, and a Latina hacker named Sophia. They armed themselves, Dre's pistol glinting, Sophia's drone buzzing overhead. The hangar loomed, its metal doors creaking, the air thick with oil and 80-degree heat. Marcus stormed in, his pulse hammering, and found Aisha, bound to a chair, her eyes wide with fear. Karen stood nearby, her smirk venomous. But Hale emerged from the shadows, his silver hair stark, his voice a low growl. "You should have quit, Tate," he said, revealing his endgame. A racist militia, funded by his millions, ready to torch Horizon's fleet. Marcus's stomach twisted, the militia's threat a death blow to his empire. Dre and Sophia flanked him, their faces grim, but Karen laughed, her hand on a detonator. "One move and she's gone," she hissed, nodding at Aisha. Marcus's mind raced, his Air Force training kicking in, the memory of Kandahar's fire guiding him. He lunged, disarming Karen with a swift strike, her detonator clattering to the floor. Dre tackled Hale, pinning him, while Sophia freed Aisha, her drone jamming the militia's comms. Marcus held his daughter, her sobs shaking him, his arms a shield. The hangar's silence was electric, the militia stalled, Hale's plan crumbling. Marcus stood, his jaw tight, Aisha safe beside him, thinking he'd won, that he'd broken Hale's final gambit. But as they fled, a sniper's bullet tore through the night, a crack echoing from the pines. Marcus staggered, pain searing his shoulder, blood soaking his hoodie. He pushed Aisha behind a crate, Dre firing back, Sophia's drone spotting the shooter. The militia, alerted, roared closer, their trucks rumbling, torches lighting the forest. Marcus's vision blurred. The 85-degree air heavy, his strength fading. He'd saved Aisha, stopped Hale, but the bullet was a reminder. Hale's machine never quit. Protesters, miles away, grew bolder, their chants now apocalyptic. End Tate. Horizon's stock dipped 10 points. The kidnapping leaked online, investors panicking. A local TV anchor, her voice slick, framed Marcus as a magnet for chaos, predicting the airline's doom. The hangar's chaos wasn't just a rescue, it was a trap. Hale's militia ready to finish what Karen started. Marcus's triumph, saving his daughter, was a fleeting spark, the sniper's shot a plunge into darkness. He thought of his father, enduring racism with quiet strength, and Aisha, her hand clutching his, her future at stake. Dre bandaged his wound, Sophia hacking. The militia's signals buying time. Marcus's phone, recovered from Karen, buzzed with a text from Tanya. Militia's moving on Horizon's fleet. The protest, his moment of hope, was ashes, Hale's shadow towering. Horizon's losses hit 55 million, flights faltering, customers fleeing. The stock crashed 15 points, the governor's support wavering. Marcus, bleeding, stood, his jaw tight, planning his escape. He'd fight the militia, protect his airline, save his people. But as the sniper's scope glinted again, the militia's roar closer, he felt the war's weight. Hale's machine, relentless. The rescue wasn't the end. It was a prelude, Karen's ultimatum a spark for Hale's inferno. What would the militia's next strike destroy, and could Marcus survive to fight another day? Marcus Tate woke in an Atlanta hospital, the 70-degree air sterile, his shoulder throbbing from the militia's sniper bullet. Aisha clung to his hand, her eyes red but fierce. Richard Hale and Karen Whitlock faced arrest, their racist empire crumbling as Horizon Airways soared, its stock climbing 30 points. But a cryptic email, sent from an untraceable server, shattered his relief. The shooting was staged by a rival CEO, Victor Crane, who'd used Hale to destabilize Horizon for a takeover. Marcus, his jaw tight, vowed to expose Crane, his fight, far from over. The city's glow outside beckoned, a new war looming. Marcus Tate's journey in flight attendant denies black veteran a seat. Then he grounds the plane, unveils profound lessons about resilience, systemic racism, and the power of truth. First, Marcus's unyielding spirit, forged in Air Force. Battles and tested by Karen Whitlock's slurs, Hale's conspiracies, and a sniper's bullet, teaches us that courage can withstand even the most vicious attacks. Despite 50 million in losses, mobs, and betrayals, he fought for Horizon Airways, proving that standing against injustice, no matter the cost, sparks change. Second, the story exposes systemic racism's brutal machinery. From Karen's public venom to Hale's bribed judges and mercenaries, prejudice wove through institutions, media, and mobs, targeting Marcus's identity, family, and legacy. It reminds us that racism isn't just personal, but a networked force, demanding collective resistance. Third, Marcus's strategic leaks, from hidden cameras to offshore accounts, show that truth, wielded with precision, can shift narratives, rallying communities and toppling lies. His victories, though fleeting, inspired millions, highlighting the impact of persistence. Finally, the shocking twist, revealing Victor Crane's manipulation, underscores that battles against racism often hide deeper enemies, urging vigilance. Marcus's vow to fight on, even from a hospital bed, calls us to never surrender. This story challenges us to confront bias in our lives, support the marginalized, and amplify truth. What's a moment you've faced injustice, and how did you push back? Comment below, hit like if Marcus's fight inspires you, and subscribe to join our journey for justice. Share this to spread awareness of racism stories that matter. Thank you for watching, and may you find strength to stand tall, like Marcus, against all odds.